Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman. Now I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Now, before we get going, I must apologize. So when I started trying to come up with a different concept for, just getting my initial thoughts on things, and saying live reaction, I just thought that sounded cool. Didn't realize that the live reaction was much like a trailer reaction, within the YouTube community where people actually film themselves watching the show. That never even crossed my mind. So when I've been tagging these videos live reactions, some people have been confused because there are no reactions from the Seaman while watching the episode. So I certainly apologize about that. We will now call these raw reactions, just raw initial thoughts. They'll remain non-spoiler at the beginning of the video. We'll dive into a spoiler recap on the back half like we've been doing. And to make up for the fact that I haven't been doing actual live reactions, I did indeed record myself watching tonight's episode of what we'll be talking about. So we'll intermittently throw in some of those reactions as the video goes. I don't know where they'll fall right now, obviously, because I'm recording it. But I'll edit them in so you guys can see some actual live reactions from the Seaman while he was watching tonight's episode. And of course, since I continue to refer to it as tonight's episode, it's Wednesday night, man, and there's only one thing to talk about on a Wednesday night on the Cinema Sit Down. That is right, folks. It is time for some American Horror Story raw reactions and recap analysis, spoiler talk on the back half. So pull up a chair, man. Take a seat. We are getting ready to dive into episode 4 of American Horror Story Apocalypse, which is entitled, Could It Be... Satan? Yes, that is right, man. We are diving into Michael's backstory tonight, and I tell you, right off the cuff, man, this was another, very nicely built episode, man. The anticipation and everything that they were built really, really nice to its crescendo at the back end. And it really gave us some inside, depth into like how powerful Michael is, how he's been able to harness some of that power, and just different things about his background. We find out why he chose Kathy Bates's form for a robot version of Kathy Bates, who he referred to someone who last week, who had raised him. Now, we didn't really get too much, no spoilers, but we don't really get into exactly who she is, but we do get to see some of that. And then we get to see where he actually kind of really harnessed his power, and how that ties into the current story that they're telling, and kind of really establishes why these sides exist, more so than just the devil versus the coven. We find out some more things that I was like, ooh, that's interesting, man. And it cleared up some of the things that we had questions about at the back half of last episode. We do get to find out where some of the other characters that we mysteriously were missing, last episode, we do get to find out where they are. And as the episode goes, we get to see that this is going to be a prolonged, kind of deviation from the current time. Tonight's episode takes place about 3 years before the bombs hit. So it does play really, really well in the fact that it's building out a multiple episode story that I think is going to fill in a lot of the gaps between what's going on with the Coven story and what's going on with Michael's story. But I really did, man. I dug the setting. I dug, some of the things that we learned tonight. And again, like I said, this is, for episode 4, this is really falling in line with early American Horror Story, man, where these first 4 episodes are just so strong in their storytelling and the way they're kind of laying out and peeling back each layer of different characters and kind of revealing. I got a very, very similar vibe to how Murder House was structured, same with Coven, in the way in which they're telling this story, which has me super excited as we go forward. Like I said, the previews for next week kind of really tie into tonight's episode too, so we're kind of going to get an extended look into the relationship that Michael has with the Coven in particular. I felt they did a really, really good job of kind of flushing out the beginning part of this story, so I'll be really, really interested to to see where they go next week. But overall, man, I really dug tonight's episode. It didn't quite pop as big as last week's. Seeing the Coven ladies show up at the end of last week was like a pop to be a pop, man. I freaked out. Should have recorded myself last week, man. Not as big, but there were a few surprises, man. And we got taken to some places that I was not expecting, and I was like, oh, okay, man, we're tying in some extra threads now. And I really dug it. Like I said, I think it's just building a really, really solid story. Yeah, so there you go, man. That's pretty much all I can say without spoiling anything. So, like I said, I'm really digging where this season is starting to go, man. Another really strong episode that falls in line with what we know from early horror story, right? Things like Murder House and Asylum and Coven, where we're just kind of slowly peeling back all these story layers that just keep revealing different things about different characters, introducing new characters, but always progressing that story forward. So far, so good. But if you have not watched the episode and you just popped in, to see what the Seaman was thinking right out the gate, now is your time to get out of Dodge, man, because we were down to rip this episode apart, dive into all the tidbits and good things that I couldn't talk about just now, including the reveal of Cheyenne Jackson's character for the first time. We finally get to see him tonight, and we can't talk about who he is because that'll give things away. So, you got 3, you got 2, you got 1. I hope you're out of here because it is recap spoiler time, man. Like I said, this was a big episode for Michael and really showing his power. And we get to start the episode back seeing him and Miss Miriam Mead, the actual Miss Miriam Mead, or at least that's the most we could assume, that her name must be tied to who she actually was before he made that robot. But we get to see him interact with Bates, and even though we don't really get to learn who exactly, Miss Miriam Mead is, we do get to see that being raised by her, she is like a satanic cultist. So she is, they had this bit where they're at the table and they're doing like their morning prayers, and they're all they're praying directly to Satan. So the most I can figure with this is that at some point Jessica Lange's character realizes that she is unequipped to deal or handle the power that must be coming from the baby or the small child at this point, and she must turn baby Michael over to Miss Miriam Mead because she doesn't know how to control his power. That's the most I can figure out, right? Like, why else would Jessica Lange give up, her grandchild, the son of her dead son, Tate, unless he became too powerful or she couldn't handle it. So maybe that's how he ends up with Miss Miriam Mead, but clearly, driving force of that satanic bit coming directly from that character. And then before that first segment kind of ends and we get our opening credits, we jump into Michael sensing a strong power coming in to the bunker, which of course was the Coven ladies. And he goes down to meet up, and you got Cordelia, you got Madison, you got Myrtle, and then you also have Coco and Adina Porter's character, Dina Stevens, and then Mallory. All 3 of them. So you have 6 witches in the room. And Michael basically, I thought we were going to get right into it, man. Like, here we go, we're clashing right away. But in very smart fashion, they take the moment of where that tension could be building or wherever that scene is going to play, and they put it on pause, and we jump back, 3 years, to where Michael ends up, where he ends up in some kind of trouble. And we see video of him kind of being interrogated, and the interrogator is like physically abusing him. And Michael kind of starts to cower and freaks out and throws the dude up on a wall, puts him up on the ceiling, breaks his arms like backward. It was crazy. Like, breaks both arms, both legs in ways that aren't natural. He drops, comes up, and like all of his bones are fine. It was really interesting video to watch, and you find out that it is a group of warlocks that are watching this video, and that, in fact, the Seaman's theory about, the bunker being on the Murder House grounds, not factual. The Murder House grounds, not there. The bunker is actually the Warlock Coven's home base. They had an actual giant house that was gorgeous, and vandals burned it to the ground, which physically forced them underground. So when they find this, we start to learn out, some things about the warlocks. And we get to see some new faces. We see Cheyenne Jackson, as I mentioned. He's one of the warlocks. BD Wong shows up, and he's really, I just love any time he shows up. And both of their hairstyles. I mean, the hair in this season is so on point and interesting from a style standpoint. But then we also get John Briones, who's the Grand Chancellor Ariel. And there's one other warlock that's in that group. And Cheyenne Jackson is the most cautious as they're watching this, and they start to talk about what it can mean. He's like, his power seems demonic. He doesn't seem like a warlock. I think we should stay away.
Need a smoke? Holy shit. It's a classic case of demonic possession. Ariel, as much as you want him to be, the boy is not a warlock.
Good Lord, man. I you know that's going to come back to, right? Like, Cheyenne Jackson's going to sit there and be like, I told you, mofos, not to bring this guy in. You definitely see that happening at some point. But everyone else just sees his raw power and the fact that maybe he could be the one. And we find out that within the warlock community, there is some, a legend, something that they've never had. They bestow levels, 1 through 4. And everybody is a level 3. The level 4 would be the alpha, someone who can rise above the supreme, and actually rise above the witches. So that becomes the driving force clearly for the warlocks. They see the power in this kid and they go, this kid could be the one who brings us to our true power and rises us above the witches. So they immediately start to train him, and we kind of jump forward. We don't get to watch the training, but we get to see that he is growing in power exponentially very, very quickly, and they start to test him. They throw 3 tests specifically at him to see if he is worthy to ask the witches' coven council to come, and perform the 7 tests to become a supreme. And he does everything way beyond what they asked, to do. Point where Cheyenne Jackson has a really awesome line where he's like, yeah, he did that, but he didn't listen to what we asked. That's not what we asked him to do. And so, he's standing in front of a mirror and they asked him to find a book. By looking into the mirror, you can tell where the book is. And instead of that, he reaches into the mirror and pulls the book out. So, like, way above and beyond even what the warlocks are looking for in that instance. And then we also get to see him, do the teleportation stuff where, he does indeed like teleport the way we saw the witches teleport. He ends up on the ceiling and that's kind of cool. But then the big one is they're all in a room and they're like, find the molecules of water, turn them to snow. And he does, he turns them to snow and snow starts falling and you see all the warlocks lighting up like, this is it, man. He is the one. And then his eyes start to flutter, roll in the back of his head. And he does some crazy, like, he did some Doctor Strange like Vogue moves, and the whole room goes like a totally different kind of blue color, and you can tell it is like beyond freezing in the room now, not just snowing. And he almost freezes all the warlocks to death before they kind of snap him out of it. But you can tell his power is super above and beyond even what he can handle, right? Like it's like this demonic spirit or whatever is in him can kind of take over without him knowing what he's doing, which has got to be scary. And Cheyenne Jackson again kind of like hints at like, we should be careful, but no, instead they call the witches in, and we get to see our coven intact. And, we get to see Taysa Farmiga playing Zoe, and she is kind of teaching a whole group of witches, different spells, and this one happens to be how to put color back into a rose. And we see a whole group, and we see one girl who looks kind of familiar. Her hairstyle a little different than what we've seen, because, we're 3 years into the past. But we get to see her flower turns blue, and then all the petals fall off. And then all the petals kind of float and they turn into butterflies, fly away, and then fall back down as petals. Petals turn back to white.
She has some ability, no question. Look.
and that is, of course, Mallory. So Mallory, super, super powerful, man. You know, we only get to see that for a moment before Myrtle comes in and says, we've been summoned, and they have to go to the Warlock's, you know, underground bunker, where, you know, they're like, why are we here? Why are you wasting our time? And they're like, we want you to do the test. And Cordelia's like, look, I look out for my own, all of my own, men or women. And we all know that the men will never rise above the, you know, the power of witches. Women own the world of magic. And she's like, but that besides that, you know, kind of just throws that right in their face. And it's like, but no, I will not do something that someone isn't ready for. I lost one witch because of that during the test. And then they proceed to kind of like throw it in her face that like, yeah, well, you know, you're so powerful, you couldn't even bring back one of your own. And this was the first big pop of the night. When you find out that Queenie, you know, was okay somewhere and vanished. So, you know, Cordelia goes looking for Queenie, and Queenie is somehow at the Hotel Cortez. Dude, my head exploded. I was like, what? The Hotel Cortez? We're going back to the hotel?
And when I found out she was trapped in the Hotel Cortez, I went immediately to bring her back from that monstrous place. And I had no illusions about it being easy.
Do that trick. Worth playing in this entire establishment.
Mr. March.
And then, we get to see good old James March, one of my favorite Evan Peters characters. He just nailed March in the hotel season. You know, whatever issues were there, him and Gaga were just so good. So to see March was awesome. But when Cordelia tries to bring Queenie out, Queenie snaps right back to the last place that she was. Can't leave the hotel. Cordelia goes on to tell this entire story, and that's like she didn't abandon Queenie, but she couldn't, you know, like, oh, you look out for your own, you abandoned Queenie. And like, I couldn't bring her out. Then we shoot up to Michael, and again, his eyes are kind of like this bright, almost like whitish blue, and he is sketching the Hotel Cortez. And he goes there on his own and finds Queenie. And as soon as he shows up, March is like, go with him. March got scared. So clearly, whatever power, you know, he has terrified March, which, I mean, he's one of the more terrifying folks we've met throughout the horror story tales. And he is sure enough able to bring Queenie out, and then he goes, we have another place to stop. And I immediately thought he was going to Murder House to go get Tate and bring out Rubberman, right? Because that would make sense on how Rubberman was able to leave Murder House to be in the bunker. You know, if Michael has that power. And I still think that's at play. Obviously, Michael has the power to bring, you know, snap the spell of ghosts being trapped in different places. He does not go to get the Rubberman, but instead goes to get Madison. So now we find out how Madison gets brought back into the fold. But what's interesting is Madison is trapped inside her own hell, which of course is one of the tests that the witches go through to become supreme, and one that she got out of. She escaped being in there. And I mean, unless I'm wrong, but I really remember her just not being able to do something Cordelia could do, and she was just like, F y'all, I'm out, and peace. But somehow, she's ended up back inside her own hell, trapped, you know, working in a department store with people just yelling and making fun of her because she used to be an actress, that whole nine. And Michael shows up and is able to bring her out. So as the witches are getting ready to leave the bunker, Michael is coming back with Madison and Queenie. It's so good to see both of them back on screen. And of course, I mean, we'd seen Emma Roberts' you know, Madison last week. So really good to see Tessa. And when they get there and they see Cordelia and the witches, you know, they're kind of like, hi. And then Cordelia faints. Now, I can't pinpoint exactly when, but there was a couple moments once Cordelia set foot inside the bunker where it seemed like she got weak when Michael was doing things, even though she wasn't necessarily seeing Michael at that point in time physically. It seemed like something about Michael was either sucking power or energy, I don't know. And then when Cordelia sees Queenie and Madison with Michael, she faints. Now, I don't know if that was from shock or if indeed Michael's presence might actually be drawing power from her. I don't know. We'll see where that goes as we dive into next week. But as soon as she collapses, both Queenie and Madison run over. And it doesn't seem like Michael has any ill will or intentions toward the witches at this point. He's just kind of trying to prove that he's as powerful as he is so that he can... I'm assuming he goes and does that so he can take the 7 tests. And you know, we see those previews in next week. We are headed towards a Michael and Coven clash next week of some kind. And that certainly will continue to tell that backstory and relationship on why they're at opposing sides. And I would probably imagine that by the end of next week's episode, we should jump back to where we kind of started this week, with the Coven being in the bunker and Michael knowing that they are there. But overall, man, I mean, a couple nice really pop moments. Like I said, seeing the Hotel Cortez and James March pop up, that was really cool. I hope that we find out how both Madison ended up in her own personal hell and how Queenie ended up at the Hotel Cortez. I hope we get to see that, you know, if not next week, somewhere throughout the story, as you know, as we keep peeling back these layers. Like I said, the season keeps kind of lining itself up to fall in line with those early American Horror Story seasons, where we're telling the story and we're just kind of peeling back layers, but that single story is always driving forward. So really, another really, really solid episode tonight. Certainly setting up what looks like could be a big 5th episode next week. So there you go, man. C-Man has reached the end of everything he's got to say about episode 4. Could it be Satan? Of American Horror Story Apocalypse. You know, we mixed in some live reactions for you, showed you some of that. So, again, I apologize for not having the correct terminology. We'll call these, kind of non-spoiler early thoughts, as I said, our raw reactions. So we did our first official C-Man Raw reaction tonight. And now diving into that recap, spoiler review. Really dug this episode. I'm really stoked about where this season's going, to the point where my buddy was like, they better not mess up the end of this season, man, because it is really, really strong right now. All right, that's all the C-Man's got to say, man. It's your turn. Hit those comments down below. Let me know what you're thinking. If you just dug the episode about Michael, seeing his power, seeing where it's starting to formulate, having the warlocks be the ones that are kind of helping him harness the power that could ultimately end the world, right? That's the other thing we saw Cordelia. She said she sees a vision of the end of the world, and she's seeing the apocalypse that we're currently living in. So it'll be interesting to see where we go. But hit those comments, man. Let me know everything you're thinking about this episode, about where we're headed, how you're liking the season. Let me know that down below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe and little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video, especially those American Horror Story recap reviews just like this one. For the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, episode 4 in the books for American Horror Story Apocalypse. I am the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace!
Oh, hey! You guys are still here! Well, fortunately, so is the C-Man, and I'm here to remind you that you can keep the fun going with just a couple clicks. So make sure you check out a different video like this one or this one. And if you're new, hit the subscribe button over here. I mean, why not? You might as well. Shoot, man.